Recording. Oh, Andy. Okay, go, Andy.
Welcome to Microsoft Office Hours for March 5th, 2026. Today, our hosts are
Heather Cox is here,
Hey everybody, I'm Dwayne.
and we are so excited. As Dwayne mentioned before we started recording, we got to hear Laurie speak internally. And in the midst of her presentation, I am pinging her and telling her about this community and saying, please come and talk to them. And she was so kind to accept that invitation right away, and even more kind to bump it up a week when we had a scheduling switch. And so, Laurie, thank you so much for being here. The floor is completely yours.
Thank you so much. And I'm so excited to be here with this very lively group who is incredibly entertaining. And just back to our Shanana foolery for a moment. So I live in Austin and I'm a wheelchair user and I use hand controls. So I've got that added level of difficulty. And I'm always tempted to put a bumper sticker on my car to say I'm driving with my hands back off to see if it just scares the cars around me. So that's my, claim to fame in Austin, driving with the hand controls. So today we're going to take a few minutes to talk about the importance of accessibility. I'll talk just a little bit about our journey and how we think about inclusive design. I'll highlight some of the accessibility features that are available in M365. We'll talk about Copilot. Of course, you're all very aware of the DOJ ruling, and I'll give you just some resources that we do have for that. And then just jump in with questions. If there are questions that pop up in the chat, I'll try to keep an eye on that. And you all may be aware of these numbers, but I always like to start with the breadth of the disability community because I think often we don't understand how many people are impacted by disability. There are 1.3 billion people worldwide who identify as disabled, and 1 in 5 identify as neurodivergent. And that number is only going up with the younger generation that you're working with every single day. So, this is our workforce. These are our students. So this is an incredibly important topic. And 83% of us are going to experience a disability at some point during our working age. And 75% of those disabilities are non-apparent. And I think often when we think of disability, we think of visible permanent disabilities like mine. As I mentioned, I use a wheelchair. I'm a quadriplegic from a spinal cord injury. So I have some arm function, no hand function, and I use a wheelchair. So I've got a visible permanent disability. But we have so many people that we're interacting with every day who have a disability we're not aware of. So you think of someone who's neurodivergent, or even someone who uses very small hearing aids that you can't see. So it falls to all of us to work to build inclusive content so that people don't feel like they have to disclose a disability or that they're neurodivergent if they're not comfortable doing so. And of course, now with AI, we are so excited about the opportunities this provides us to create more inclusive solutions easier and quicker than ever before. So I'll talk just a minute about the Microsoft journey. We've been on this journey for 30 years. We introduced our first accessibility feature back in 1994, which was sticky keys, which is a tool that I still use today. If you've ever accidentally hit your shift key a few times and you get that ping sound, and then you can't figure out why you can't hold 3 keys down concurrently, it's sticky keys, built for people with mobility disabilities. And when we first started our journey, we were on these parallel paths. We had our technology path and our people path. And then when Satya Nadella became our CEO and revised our mission statement to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more, we realized that we needed to evaluate our program and really run accessibility as a business so that we could track and measure and continue to improve it. And that's why we brought these two paths together and stopped focusing so much on just checking the box on compliance and really focused on creating a delightful experience for everyone who uses our products. And so just a few inclusive design principles that we leverage. We bring accessibility into the design phase of the product development lifecycle. We have accessibility architects on our teams, many of whom have lived experiences. We have voice of the employee who contribute directly to the product teams. We have voice of the customer. For example, I sit on the voice of the employee for our voice access tool, which is a tool I use every day. So I'm bringing that lived experience because we can't build for the disability community. We need to build with the disability community. And we find that when we do that, everyone benefits. And just a few quick non-tech examples of when we build for one, everyone benefits. The typewriter was built in the 1800s for a disabled person. A gentleman, I had a lady friend who was blind and was not able to write letters to him, so he created the typewriter so she could send him letters. Give me a thumbs up if you used an electric toothbrush this morning. I certainly did. This was created for people with mobility disabilities like me, but so many of us on this call have used an electric toothbrush. The bendable straw is my favorite example because I rely heavily on bendable straws, again, related to my disability, but they didn't become commercially viable until hospitals started ordering them for their disabled and elderly patients. And the OXO Good Grips is another great example. If you've used an OXO Good Grip, it's a kitchen utensil with a thicker rubber handle. It was created by a husband whose wife had arthritis and would struggle with her kitchen utensils. And then when we think about some tech examples, give me another thumbs up if you've used captions not related to a disability. I use captions just because I'm getting older, I think. I'm not sure why I like them now, but and many of you do too. Of course, created for the deaf and hard of hearing community, but Netflix just issued a report that said 50% of their streamed content is streamed with captions on, and we know that 80% of Gen Z users use captions. Audiobooks is another great example. 52% of adults have listened to an audiobook. It's almost surpassing regular books. And so that's the mindset that we have when we're creating and building accessibility features into our products. And I won't spend a ton of time on this in the interest of time, but I just want to highlight a few of the features that you may not be aware of. And it starts with Windows plus U. So think of Windows and U. When you click on your Windows key and your U key, that gets you directly to the accessibility settings in Windows. And these are a few examples of some of the things that are built right into the operating system. And I'll highlight just a few. One is the mouse pointer. I make my mouse pointer larger and bright pink. With my aging eyeballs, it makes it easier for me to see, and it makes it easier for others to see when I'm doing demos. Magnifier is a great way to just zoom in on your screen. So you can click your Windows key and your plus sign, that's going to zoom you in. Windows key escape gets you out. Color filters is a great tool that was originally built for people who have color vision deficiency or color blindness, which is 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women. You can select your specific type of color blindness, and it's going to apply the appropriate color palette across all of your applications. And then in Windows 11, we added some additional color filters, things like grayscale. Contrast themes is another great example. You can apply a more muted color palette to your applications, and you can also customize it to the colors that work best for you. This is particularly helpful for people who have low vision to select colors that work best for them. Moving over into hearing, we've got captions. We've got captions in Teams, but we also have them built into the operating system so that you can turn them on and they'll caption any audio coming through your laptop. I mentioned voice access, which is a feature I use. It enables me to leverage my voice to navigate my laptop. I can open applications, close them, toggle through them, and convert speech to text. Focus is a great feature, not actually in the accessibility settings, but if you search for it, you'll find it. It puts you basically into a do not disturb mode, and it mutes all of those disruptions that we get every day. And if you have a Spotify account, you can link your Spotify account to your focus mode, and it will automatically start playing your playlist when you go into focus mode. Jumping over into some of the application features, Immersive Reader was created for people who are dyslexic. It's probably our most used accessibility feature, and it will read text aloud to you. It will enable you to spread letters out to reduce crowding. You can divide words up by syllables. You can highlight 1, 3, or 5 rows at a time. And you can put a muted color palette behind your text. Dictation is just a quick way to convert speech to text. And this is really useful. I find our blog writers will use this, not related to a disability, but because it's just a different way or a multimodal way for them to create content rather than typing. Read aloud is a feature I use if I've got a long document or a long email, it's the end of the day. I'll turn on read aloud to improve my reading comprehension. And translation is a tool that we consider an accessibility feature because if I'm sending you content in Spanish and you're a native English speaker, it might be more difficult for you to consume. Moving over into Teams, we have some amazing features, and I love a couple of product stories here. One is sign language view. We have an accessibility architect on our Teams team. He's deaf. He uses a sign language interpreter. He would join a call like this with 130 people on it. He's paging through all the people looking for his interpreter, and now he's missed the first couple of minutes of the meeting. So now what he can do is he can designate his interpreter in his team's settings. So when she joins him on a call, she's automatically pinned in a larger high resolution window in the same spot on his screen every time, so he doesn't have to go through that exercise. Another really great feature is blur. I bet many of us used blur during the pandemic because we didn't want people to see how messy our home offices were behind us. I certainly did. But that actually came from the disability community as well. We have an engineer who's deaf and reads lips. When she'd join a call, she'd ask people to dim the lights behind them so she could more easily focus on lip reading. She brought that idea to a hackathon, and out of it came blur background. One tip, this is a homework assignment. When you're presenting using PowerPoint, if you're sharing your screen and showing your slides, a screen reader is not able to read your content. But if you use PowerPoint Live, a screen reader can consume that content. So again, important to run accessibility checker to be sure your content's accessible. And then it also enables you to turn things on like high contrast. So below your screen, if you go to the change view menu, you'll see the option to turn on high contrast. And it turns it on only for you, not for the entire meeting. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit because we talked about this a minute ago. But while I think the productivity tools are super important, it's equally important to talk about how to build accessible content and how to be able to verify that. And so I went through this earlier, but just to reiterate a little bit, this is your second homework assignment. The next time you open up Word or PowerPoint, go into your options menu and then to your accessibility settings, and you'll see the option to toggle on, I forget the exact verbiage, but it will toggle on the accessibility assistant, which again brings a spell checking to, or brings it to the forefront similar to spell checking. And it's going to help you identify things like low contrast, missing alt text, blank hyperlinks, things like that. And as I mentioned, we also have that available in SharePoint. It's on the right-hand side under the Tools menu. And it's going to look, again, for things like your page structure, your missing alt text, blank links, poorly structured tables, and color contrast. So hopefully you'll find that tool really useful. I love it. I think it's a game changer. Okay, so jumping into Copilot, of course, we cannot have a conversation today without talking about Copilot and generative AI. And just for a little context, I sit on the central accessibility team here at Microsoft, and we were given very early access to Copilot to test across three things. One, the usability of the interface. Is it accessible for people who use screen readers, people who use keyboard only? Two, are the data models representative of disability? And three, are we training the bias out of the models? So for example, if I prompt Copilot with, I have a mobility disability, what accessibility features can I use? It has to know what a mobility disability is and what tools will support me. That's the representation we want in the model. But it also should not respond with, I'm sorry you have a disability. That's the bias that we're training out of the models. And so along the way, we started documenting how we were leveraging Copilot. And I'll give you just a few use cases. Our disability policy advisor, you can imagine she's reading a lot of long, complex documents right now. She's dyslexic. And so she'll use Copilot to summarize documents and summarize them using plain language. Another one of our blog writers is dyslexic, and she's a brilliant writer, but she's difficult at getting started looking at a blank Word document. So she'll use Copilot to create that first draft. I've got a colleague who has autism, and he would tell you that the tone of his email can be a little bit blunt or harsh. So he'll use Copilot to soften the tone of his email. Another colleague with autism would say that she doesn't know when to jump in on a Teams call with a question, so she'll ask Copilot. Teams meeting recap is an absolute game changer for me. So I don't have hand function. So if I'm in a meeting, I'm not able to type on a traditional keyboard, and I can't use speech to text because my microphone is on. So I would have to remember what was said, find time during my day to dictate my notes, which was incredibly stressful and time consuming. So Teams meeting recap has absolutely changed my life. Moving over into vision, I've got a colleague who's blind who would tell you that for the first time in his career, he's able to create beautiful professional PowerPoint presentations without the help of a sighted assistant. Another colleague, if she gets an image in a PowerPoint presentation or an email that doesn't have alt text on it, she can drop that image into Copilot chat and get an incredibly rich description of the image. And of course, I'm talking about the full enterprise license, but there are so many great use cases also if you just have Copilot chat that you can leverage for accessibility. Last year, we partnered with EY to do a study to measure the impact of Copilot on employees who identify as disabled or neurodivergent, and the results were astounding. 91% of respondents viewed Copilot as a helpful assistive technology. 85% believe that it creates a more inclusive workplace. And 76% reports that it helps them thrive at work. And there were 3 key drivers that came out of the study. The first is that it removes barriers. And I'll go back to my example. Teams meeting recap completely removed a barrier for me. It improves productivity. Of course, we've seen this in every study that's ever been done. But if you think about someone who's neurodivergent and they're sending an email to their leadership team, they might sit on that email for hours or days concerned about the level of detail and the tone. But now with Copilot, they can leverage it to create that first draft and refine the tone. And the third is that it enhances meaning. It enables people to take on work that's more meaningful or more impactful. And there were many, many quotes that came out of the study, but one that resonated with me and that really drives that third point home is a neurodivergent employee who said they would hesitate to take on certain projects because they were afraid they would fail. And now with Copilot, they feel like they've got the tools they need. They're taking on those projects, they're succeeding, and they're receiving that recognition from their peers and their managers. That's the power of Copilot. And of course, we've talked in the chat. I know we've posted a few things about the DOJ ruling. We're all closely watching it. We're not quite sure what's going to happen, but of course, the recommendation is to continue on this path. And honestly, we want content to be accessible anyway. So I know I don't really need to educate any of you on this ruling, but of course, it applies to your digital assets. And I know everyone is frantically working to get these remediated. And of course, Microsoft does not audit and remediate, but we do have partners that are well known in this space who do offer these services. And so I have a few of them listed here. Some are out on our marketplace, some are not, but these are all ones that we would recommend. We feel strongly about the work that they do. And we'll share these links out. We'll share this deck out with you as well. And again, Heather and I will talk offline about the potential to build a generative AI solution or a Copilot solution using Foundry. And then I will wrap up with just a few resources that you have available, and then we'll quickly try to answer any questions that you have. We've got some great support resources that are available to help you find and discover accessibility features in our products. The first is our generative AI chatbot called Ask Microsoft Accessibility. And because we're in PowerPoint Live, you can click on these links in real time, but we will share them out. But this chatbot, you can go interact with it and ask questions about the accessibility features in our products. We also have the Enterprise Disability Answer Desk. So if you've got a question about or an issue with an accessibility feature in our products, you can reach out to EDAD. It's a free service. Anyone can reach out. It doesn't have to go through IT or HR because, again, we don't want people to feel like they have to disclose a disability if they're not comfortable doing so. And even if it includes third-party AT. So for example, if I'm using JAWS screen reader and it's not working well with Word, we've got relationships with those third-party AT providers because we want a seamless experience for everyone. So do feel free to reach out. Their direct line back to our engineering team. And then we've got lots of training resources that are available. At Microsoft, when you onboard, one of the first mandatory trainings is Accessibility 101. And we've shared that out on YouTube so that everyone can take advantage of it. We also have an Accessibility Fundamentals training, which is 6 modules that dive a little deeper into accessibility. It starts with Accessibility 101, just the basics, and it goes all the way through to how to build inclusive experiences leveraging AI. It's also available via a SCORM package, so you can upload it into your own learning management system so that you can track it. And then the rest of the slides are just resources that you can leverage to learn more about some of the productivity features, how to build accessible content, inclusive meeting tips and tricks. And again, we'll share all these links out with you. We'll share the deck. And then finally, some learn more links where you can go and learn more. And I know I just said a whole lot of words, so I'm going to pause there so that we've got time for some questions.
It appears that one of the links, the Ask Microsoft Accessibility, is not connecting.
Of course, because that's what happens in real time. I'm going to put the short link in the chat.
I mean, 1 out of like 50 is fine in my book. There's a lot of great links in that.
Well, and thankfully this group has a really good sense of humor and completely understands that's that's basically what happens.
Oh, Eric.
Um,
Oh my gosh, I got called out.
oh wait, is it? Somebody I just oh, it's not accessible. That yes. The best part though, and so Dwayne has all Dwayne. It's funny, and I hope my thing doesn't cut out. But Dwayne's always we have teased Dwayne forever because he has been such a PowerPoint Live advocate. But I think hopefully, if you weren't already convinced that it's a necessity, that's another one. And I was listening, but my brain also is slow these days because getting older. But another thing, and I don't think you said it, but another thing that has been said to me with PowerPoint Live as well, and you had it available for the presentation, is allowing people to go forward and back
Yes.
in the presentation. And not simply because, I have turned it off for some occasions for very specific reasons, especially if I know I'm going to be going very slowly through it, depending on the group size. But one of the reasons people recommend leaving that on is for accessibility reasons, that everybody is processing information at different speeds, and you may need to spend more time reviewing a particular slide than another. And so maybe you need to go back. Yes, there in the chat is the very fancy presentation that our team has, well, our team, Dwayne, has created in the past. Or somebody, or maybe it
That
was
was Will.
Will.
Will
Yeah,
Thomas
yes.
made this.
One of our CSAs made that as a joke, but in seriousness as well. But that way you can go back. So if they're going forward and you're not understanding the foundation, you can go back and see those slides and then sync to the presenter. So just another reason that it's great to use PowerPoint Live. That's one of the things that we've always talked about. And I really, you did mention it, Laurie, where one of the first things that we at Microsoft have to do is take a course in accessibility. Several members that show up to this call all the time have been super big champions of that. James Reed, I see his face. Nick Miller, I saw him in the chat, but I know he's done a lot with that. I actually once I've gotten I sent an email. It was one of my office hours emails that did not have. I always have my little banner at the top. Some people like it, some people don't. But I had my banner at the top. Not have alt text, and I received an email. I've probably told this story on here, but that the individual was like, your email's not accessible. And she literally went through and pointed out all the different things. And I said, you're right. We preach accessibility, and I want to make sure that it is. So if you run my stuff through a screen reader now, that MS Office Hours email is always going to work for you, because I never forget that alt text on there as a result. So, it's so important that we are paying attention to those things. And I've already gone and turned on the Word and the PowerPoint accessibility things. I was like, okay, turn them on now, so I love that. And like I said, Dwayne and I heard this and we were like, I was like, Lord, please come tell this group. And I'll make sure I get this up on our MS Office Hours YouTube channel really quickly so that everybody's able to share with others. But this was wonderful. I know we're nearing the end, but Dwayne, did you have something or questions?
Yeah, I wanted to plug EDAD.
Yes.
Because they're awesome. So that link was in Laurie's deck. I've been able to engage with them with customers, where we've discovered problems, or things that were missed in an application, that needed to be added back. And James just came on camera. He introduced me to how amazing EDAT is and the ability, how accessible they are, like no pun intended, but like they are readily available, and they will jump in and they will help and get on a call and just do awesome stuff to make sure that stuff works the way it's supposed to work.
100%. And that's the thing. We have found documents that we have produced at Microsoft that are not very compliant at all. And we've taken them back internally, and EDAD helped champion to get those updated where we had no one to own them anymore. And again, we want to do the right thing. And so even with our products, we will champion internally for that and spread this information, get it over to your academic technologists, get it over into those teams so they're aware. These are resources this is fundamental. So it's not just an IT thing. And we want them to be able to pick up the phone, call in and say, hey, how do we do this? How do we get this to work in this scenario? And just not, abandon it. Because again, this is important.
I want to emphasize the word that James just used was fundamental. Like accessibility is not, it's not an add-on just to be nice. We should be incorporating it in everything. And Laurie, I know we're right at the time, and I'm sure folks have to drop, but I want to just ask again, when it comes to, and we always tell the community this, that folks working on our tools and doing all the behind the scenes stuff, that you want customer feedback on these, because we tell everybody the folks are listening. Like, yes, you can tell us and we communicate it, but customers providing feedback is actually listened to. It doesn't go into a black hole. Like you think sometimes there's websites where you're like, here's my feedback, and then nothing changes. Like we have watched it happen here. And so to continue to provide your customer feedback, because that's the only way things are going to either, keep the features that are amazing and then enhance the product as we go further. So to provide that feedback as readily as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Laurie, thank you so much again.
Yeah.
Appreciate this sincerely. Everybody, thank you for showing up. Again, we love you, and hopefully we'll see you again next week. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm going to kick you out of the meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
All right, thanks.